I spent $70,000 and 5 years getting an information technology degree, and it actually held me back from getting hired as a cloud engineer. After working with more than 300 students who landed $120,000 to $150,000 cloud engineer roles, I noticed something surprising. The people without degrees often get hired faster than the people who have them. I know that sounds backwards, but by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why my degree kept me stuck at $50,000 while people without degrees were landing $150,000 roles, and what I should have done instead. I'm going to tell you the most embarrassing part of my story, and typically I don't do this. I had a full information technology degree, 5 years of school, $70,000 in tuition plus certifications including AWS CCP, Security Plus, CompTIA A+, and I was still working help desk making $55,000 a year. I remember sitting in my car at 2 a.m. in the morning after finishing an Uber Eats delivery, staring at my phone waiting for the next order because my help desk salary was not enough to cover my bills. That was my life at the time. My degree was just hanging on the wall, certifications on the resume, and still not enough money to live without a second job. The worst part was that I genuinely believed that the degree was my ticket, and I thought if I just kept collecting credentials, eventually someone would notice and give me a chance. But here's what nobody's going to tell you while you're sitting in those classrooms. A degree teaches you theory of how technology works, but it does not teach you how to actually build anything. I could explain what a VPC was using a textbook definition. I could tell you what EC2 stood for, and I could recite the OSI model from memory. But if you asked me to deploy a scalable, fault-tolerant infrastructure on AWS from scratch, I had absolutely no idea where to start. That was the real problem. I had what I call a credential mindset instead of a capability mindset. I was thinking that I had a degree, so someone should hire me, instead of asking, what can I actually build that proves I can do this job? That shift took me years for me to make, and it cost me thousands in wasted tuition and countless interviews and rejections. Now I'm going to show you something that completely changed how I understood how people get hired. If you pull up almost any cloud engineer job posting right now, whether it's AWS cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, or cloud infrastructure engineer, you will notice a very consistent pattern in the requirements. You're going to see things like hands-on experience deploying and managing AWS infrastructure, experience with Terraform or CloudFormation, proficiency with CI/CD pipelines and containerized environments, and demonstrated experience building production-grade systems. What you will almost never see listed as the primary requirement is a bachelor's degree in information technology. I actually went through this exercise when I was trying to understand why I kept getting rejected, and I analyzed 50 cloud engineer job postings across multiple companies. Across those 50 postings, the overwhelming requirement was hands-on experience, not a degree. Then I started paying attention to what hiring managers were actually telling me in interviews. Across different interviews, I had 6 hiring managers tell me the same thing. They told me that they would rather hire someone with 6 months of real hands-on experience than someone with a PhD and 8 certifications, because the person with the real experience can actually do the job on day one. 6 different hiring managers said essentially the same message. That was the moment I realized my degree was not actually helping me in interviews. And in some cases, it was even working against me because it signaled that I had just spent years studying theory instead of building real systems. The moment everything changed for me was when I stopped trying to get hired based on credentials and started building real AWS projects that proved I could do the work. The first serious project I built was a scalable web application using VPC networking, auto scaling, load balancing, and a relational database. That single project did more for my career than 5 years of school ever did. When I started walking into interviews after the project, I was no longer describing concepts from a textbook. I was describing something I built, something that I broke, and something that I troubleshooted until I figured it out. I had stories, architecture diagrams, GitHub repos, and real examples of problem solving. And that changed everything about how interviews saw me. After coaching more than 300 students through this same transition, I noticed something fascinating. The students who come in without a degree often moves faster than the students who already have them. The reason is surprisingly simple. People without degrees, they don't have the credential crutch. When you don't have a degree, you know immediately that you must prove yourself through capability. So you start building real-world projects right away. You do not wait for a credential to open the door. You build the door yourself. People with degrees, including myself at the time, often waste months trying to leverage credentials that hiring managers simply do not care about. We lead with a degree, we highlight the certifications, and we wonder why interviews are not converting into offers. Meanwhile, the candidate without degrees lead with what they built, and that is what gets them hired. Let me show you a very practical example of what this looks like. Imagine two resumes from IT professionals trying to break into cloud engineering. Resume number one leads with education and certifications, showing a bachelor's of science in information technology. Several certifications listed at the very top of his resume. The work history on that resume shows 2 years of help desk and desktop support. Resume number two leads with projects and technical accomplishments. It says things like deployed a multi-availability zone, AWS infrastructure with auto scaling and load balancing, automated infrastructure using Terraform, reducing deployment time from hours to 8 minutes, and built a CI/CD pipeline enabling zero downtime deployment. The work history is still 2 years of help desk. The background is essentially the same. Which resume do you think gets the callback? Resume number two wins almost every single time. That's because resume number two answers the most important question hiring managers are asking. Can this person actually do the job? A degree does not answer that question. Projects answer that question immediately. That's why people without degrees often win interviews in this market. Not because degrees are worthless everywhere, but because for cloud engineering roles, demonstrated capability beats documented education almost every time. If you're someone without a degree who's been told you can't break into tech, or someone with a degree wondering why interviews are not turning into offers, I run an 8-week program focused entirely on building the hands-on skills and projects that actually land jobs. We guarantee you get hired within 12 months, regardless of your educational background, and you can click the first link in the description to learn more. Now, let's get back to the video. So let me be very direct about where this leaves you, whether you have a degree or not. If you have a degree, stop leading with it because it's not your competitive advantage in this hiring market. Your degree may have helped you get into your first IT role, but it's not going to move you into cloud engineering. What's going to get you hired is demonstrating that you've built real infrastructure and solved problems. If you don't have a degree, you're not behind, and I want you to hear that very clearly. In many cases, you actually have an advantage because you can focus immediately on building real skills instead of spending years hoping a credential will carry you. There are 3 core AWS projects that prove you can do this work at a professional level. The first project is deploying a scalable web application on AWS using a VPC with a public and private subnet across multiple availability zones. You want to place your EC2 instance behind an application load balancer with auto scaling and configure an RDS database in a private subnet with multiple availability zone failover. Next, you want to go ahead and add monitoring using CloudWatch dashboards and alarms so the system behaves like real production infrastructure. The second project is automating that infrastructure using Terraform. This is where things get fun. This is exactly what companies need right now in the market. You convert everything you built manually into infrastructure as code using a proper folder structure, including main, variables, and outputs files, while demonstrating the plan and apply workflow. This proves you can operate in a modern DevOps environment. The third project is building a CI/CD pipeline for automated deployment. You connect GitHub to code pipeline, code build, and code deploy, while configuring automated testing and rolling deployments with health checks based rollbacks. This proves you understand how real engineer teams ship software safely. When you present these 3 projects in interviews, you do not start by talking about your degree or certifications. You start by explaining the problem you are solving, the architecture you designed, the challenges you encountered, and the results you achieved. And when companies screen resumes, they're not searching for degree keywords. They're searching for AWS, Terraform, VPC, CI/CD, EC2, and auto scaling tied to real work you've built. Here's something important I want you to see. These are students from my program with different backgrounds, different ages, and different starting points. Some have degrees and some don't have degrees at all. What they all share is that they've built real-world projects, learned how to present them correctly, and landed cloud engineer roles paying $120, $150, even $180,000 and beyond. Your degree or lack of one is not what determines whether you succeed in this field. What determines is if you're willing to build the skills and prove that you can do the job. I spent $70,000 in 5 years earning an IT degree, and I was still stuck making $55,000 while delivering Uber Eats at 2 a.m. in the morning. What eventually allowed me to earn nearly $500,000 as a cloud engineer was not my degree, but the hands-on AWS projects that proved I could actually do the job. You can continue relying on a degree and hope someone eventually notices your credentials. Or you can start building real projects that prove you can perform cloud engineering work from day one. If you have a degree, stop leading with it and start leading with capability. If you don't have a degree, you're not behind. Your focus should simply be proving what you can actually build. If you want our team to guide you through building those projects and guarantee you land a $120,000 to $150,000 cloud engineer role within 12 months, regardless of your educational background, click the first link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.